Welcome back to Sissy Maya. Make sure to subscribe to our channel to never miss an update. Additionally, consider subscribing to my Patreon to get access to these features, and much more. My journey began at the onset of adolescence. Having just completed junior high, I was both nervous and excited about starting high school. With the whole summer ahead, I had big plans to enjoy it thoroughly. Surprisingly, I found myself in quite a bit of trouble, despite not being troublesome. I was never involved in fights, maintained good grades, was sociable, and to my knowledge, had never intentionally harmed anyone. Perhaps it was a matter of hormonal timing. My development was notably delayed compared to my peers. Most of them were already experiencing or had gone through puberty, while I had yet to show any significant signs. Some of my closest friends needed to shave a few times a week, but I remained completely smooth-skinned, save for a slight trace of soft hair on my legs that was barely visible. My voice was still high-pitched, my skin smooth, and my face and body remained hairless. I had even pleaded with my mom to let me get a military-style haircut to appear older, but she refused, insisting my hair was too beautiful to cut short. So, it stayed long, just brushing my collar. This became a source of mockery among my friends, who nicknamed me Baby Face, a label so embarrassing that I avoided showers at school for the entire last year. When I expressed my frustration to my mom, she simply advised patience, assuring me that my time would come. However, this did little to alleviate my concerns about my youthful appearance. When I proposed taking a joyride in a stolen car, I was likely trying to assert my masculinity and earn respect from my friends who had already gone through puberty. It was a misguided attempt to prove my toughness. Unfortunately, we were quickly caught and our parents had to pick us up from the police station. Just 3 days later, we found ourselves in juvenile court. While the others received 6 months of probation, I was handed 3 years due to a friend claiming I was the ringleader. The judge warned that any further mischief from me could land me in reform school. Crushed, my mother assured the judge it wouldn't happen again, and I was grounded for the rest of the summer. Despite this, I made another poor decision 3 nights later by sneaking out to the movies. When I returned, my mother was beyond upset. She declared I wouldn't leave the house again that summer unless she was with me, and that night, she even made me sleep in her room. The next morning, I went to my room to get dressed and found my closet completely empty. Frantically searching through drawers also turned up nothing. I called down to my mother, who told me she had laid out clothes on my bed. Returning to my room, I was shocked to find a plaid skirt and a silky, lace-collared blouse waiting for me. I confronted her in just my underwear, leading to probably the worst argument we'd ever had. She insisted on keeping me home all summer, even if it meant dressing me in girls' clothes. My yelling soon turned to desperate pleading for my clothes back, but she was resolute. She firmly stated that if I wanted to come downstairs, especially for meals, I had to wear what she had selected for me. I remained in my room the entire day, skipping both breakfast and lunch. By 7 in the evening, I was really hungry, but my mother wouldn't even entertain a conversation until I changed my clothes. Left with no other option, I reluctantly put on the skirt and blouse and took a look at myself in the mirror. I appeared utterly ridiculous and hoped that this display might amuse her enough to believe I had learned my lesson and deserved to have my regular clothes back. Even my shoes were feminine, patent leather with a small buckle across the instep. Taking a deep breath, I walked into the kitchen. She neither laughed nor indicated where my regular clothes were. Instead, she simply commented, "You look very nice," kissed me on the forehead, and started serving dinner. Hungry as I was, she had prepared all my favorite dishes. Before long, I was engrossed in the meal and no longer mindful of what I was wearing. After dinner, she unveiled more unexpected plans. She pointed out that my blouse seemed ill-fitting due to my flat chest and handed me a padded bra, still tagged with its price. Hoping that cooperating might lead her to see the absurdity of her actions, I complied and put it on. Next, she presented a slip and lacy panties, promptly discarding my regular underwear in the trash, which made me suspect the fate of my other clothes. Once I was fully dressed, She stepped back and scrutinized me for several minutes. "Not bad," she remarked. "Not bad at all for a start. Far from perfect, but you have potential. Go take a look at yourself in the mirror." I did as she said and was shocked by the reflection. I resembled a girl with an unfortunate haircut. My emotions were a mix, embarrassed yet slightly thrilled, feeling both shame and guilt while also being somewhat captivated by the image I presented. I also experienced a sense of loss. Where had the boy gone? What would become of my summer plans? What would happen to me if I began to embrace this new reflection staring back at me? What if my friends saw me like this? The initial shock paled in comparison to what happened the next day. She took me out shopping, dressed in the plaid skirt and blue blouse. It turned out that these items were just the beginning of my new wardrobe, and she wanted to ensure the rest would fit well. Despite my resistance, much like the night before, I was unsuccessful. She considerately drove us to a neighboring town to reduce the likelihood of running into anyone we knew. Surprisingly, she wasn't embarrassed to be seen in public with me dressed as a girl. In fact, she seemed to relish the experience. Even the saleswomen in the stores appeared to be amused, making comments like, "Isn't he cute? And wouldn't it be nice if more little boys wanted to look pretty?" It would have been easier if they hadn't recognized me as a boy, but my disguise didn't fool anyone up close. I remained silent, bearing the embarrassment. I hoped that my compliance would eventually lead my mother to return some of my male clothes and let me enjoy at least part of my summer as a boy. Mother invested quite a bit of money. Though we weren't wealthy, we were financially stable. Since my father passed away 3 years ago, Mother had been working, more for activity than necessity, as my father had left her substantial insurance and she was receiving his pension. She showed no concern about the costs as she sought to feminize me and isolate me from my friends. I must have tried on 20 to 30 dresses, and we ended up purchasing more than half. We also bought an array of distinctly feminine undergarments, including slips, bras, panties, hosiery, and several body-shaping items. It seemed that every time she liked to dress on me, we also had to pick out a new pair of shoes to match. One particular purchase was especially concerning. I tried on a short, pleated red skirt paired with a black knit top and a matching red blazer. Upon seeing it, she commented, "Oh, that will look nice for church." The thought of attending church dressed like that alarmed me, but before I could voice my concerns, she was already selecting a pair of black heels to complete the outfit. Just as I thought our shopping was finally over, we made another stop at a jewelry counter to buy several rings, bracelets, and necklaces. The salesgirl mentioned earrings and they moved to another part of the counter. I couldn't hear their conversation, but I saw them examining a tray. They beckoned me to come behind the counter and sit in a chair. Naively hoping to expedite our departure, I complied. The salesgirl explained that the lighting was better there for holding earrings up to my ear to give my mother a clearer view. As she did so, I suddenly felt a sharp pain in my right ear. She had pierced it. Upset and feeling betrayed, I protested loudly and refused to let her near my other ear. My outburst made my mother cry and harsh words were exchanged with the salesgirl. Embarrassed by the scene and my mother's tears, and with onlookers staring, I felt cornered and humiliated. My mother insisted, through her tears, that I couldn't leave with just one earring. Wanting nothing more than to go home, I reluctantly allowed the salesgirl to pierce my left ear. When she turned me to face the mirror, I saw small diamond studs in each ear. At that moment, I felt utterly defeated. My sense of masculinity seemed erased, and I realized my mother was going to dictate terms going forward. I was so disheartened that I lost any desire to resist. Subsequently, when Mother pulled up in front of a beauty salon, I didn't utter a word of protest. Even as the beautician instructed me to take off my blue blouse and don a smock, I complied silently. I sat numbly through the washing, trimming, and styling of my hair in rollers. As the stylist was finishing my new hairstyle, I overheard her telling my mother, "Her hair is a bit short, but the cut I've given her will grow out nicely. The perm will help her look less boyish as it grows." It was the first time I was referred to as her, and I was unaware then of how significant that label would become by the end of the summer. The transformation didn't stop with the new hairstyle. I received a facial, had my eyebrows shaped into thin arches, my lashes curled, my fingernails manicured and painted bright red, and makeup applied to my face. When the beautician finally turned me toward the mirror, I was astonished. If my masculinity was compromised at the jewelry store, it was in the beauty salon where I embraced my new, feminine identity. I looked beautiful, and at that moment, I didn't miss the boy I once was. On the way home, we even stopped for lunch, and I thoroughly enjoyed my first meal presenting as a girl. No one perceived me as a boy anymore, and I relished the new experience. My mother and I reconnected during that meal, and even though I struggled to articulate my feelings, I believe she sensed my newfound enjoyment in living as a girl. She was thrilled, sharing her dreams of having a daughter and her plans for our summer together. It was a long, transformative day. I lost my masculinity in a jewelry store, fell in love with my femininity in a beauty parlor, and found in a restaurant that my mother had become my closest ally. My summer immersed in a feminine lifestyle had begun. Every day, my mother diligently taught me various skills. I learned to apply makeup subtly, understood how to coordinate outfits and colors, and refined my mannerisms to be more feminine while shedding any masculine habits. I also contributed around the house, learning to cook and keep things tidy. At night, I wore beautiful gowns, and during the day, my attire consisted of dresses, skirts, and blouses. I was embracing this new version of myself, yet I increasingly dreaded the thought of returning to school as a boy. Sometimes, my friends would call, and my mother would explain that Roger was in Florida with her sister for the summer due to his recent troubles. Eventually, the calls ceased. About 3 weeks after our shopping trip, the doorbell rang, instilling a deep fear in me. I hadn't even considered the possibility of being recognized by someone from my past life. Panicked, I ran to my room, fearing they might have seen me through the window. My mother answered the door, and from the voices, I could tell it was Uncle Smith, her brother and a doctor. We had grown closer since my father's passing, and the thought of him seeing me as a girl was unbearable. For the first time, I regretted allowing this transformation and despised what I had let happen. I hid in my closet, hoping he wouldn't come upstairs, trusting my mother to keep my secret. I could hear their voices but couldn't discern their words. It sounded like they were arguing, and curiosity got the better of me. With shaky legs, I tiptoed to the top of the stairs, hiding where I could quickly retreat to my room if necessary. "Louise, what you are asking me to do is wrong, and I won't do it," Uncle Smith declared. "Look, Smith, it's going to happen one way or another. If you won't help, I'll find someone who will," my mother retorted. "I'm not going to let him end up like his father." They were discussing my car theft incident. I knew little about my father's death, only that he was shot and killed in a bar fight. Was this why my mother dressed me this way? Did she think it could prevent a similar fate for me? "But Louise, there are other ways to protect him," Uncle Smith insisted. "Oh, there might be, but this is making us both very happy," my mother replied. "I just can't believe that. Roger is all boy. He would never enjoy living as a girl," Uncle Smith countered. Oh no, she had told him. He knew everything. Nausea overwhelmed me, and I feared I might pass out. "Well, you're wrong, Mr. Smart Doctor. He's taken to being a girl much faster than he took to baseball. He loves his new life, and if you won't help him be more comfortable as a girl, I'll find other means," my mother stated firmly. "But what you're proposing might not be reversible if he changes his mind," Uncle Smith cautioned. "He won't change his mind," my mother asserted. "Has he started puberty yet?" Uncle Smith asked. "No, not yet, and we need to act before it starts," she replied. "Actually, if you and Roger are serious about this, we should wait a year. Let him live as a girl for that time and see if this is really what he wants," suggested Smith. "That's just it, dear brother. We don't have a year. Puberty could start any day now," my mother argued. "The medication would work much faster if started before he begins producing a lot of testosterone. But if we start now, He might never produce any male hormones, rendering his male organs non-functional, Uncle Smith explained. Will you do it? My mother asked. I didn't say that. Can I see him? You realize I would need to give him a complete physical. I can't just prescribe something without that, Uncle Smith responded. My mother called out for me, and my heart nearly stopped. She called again, Romy. She had been using that name for the past 3 weeks, but I never imagined she would use it in front of Uncle Smith. Frozen, I didn't respond. She came upstairs and sat beside me on the floor. Taking my hand, she said gently, Romy, darling, I know you're frightened, but this is important. I'm trying to help you find happiness. Now, honestly, do you enjoy being a girl? All I managed to reply was, yes. Soon, your body will start changing. You'll grow facial hair, your skin will roughen, your body shape and voice will become more masculine. Your uncle has some medicine that can prevent these changes, but he needs to be sure you truly want this before he can proceed. I loved you as my son, but I love you just as much now as my daughter. If you want to continue living as a girl, you need to meet him and tell him yourself. It's your choice. She then stood up and walked back downstairs. Well, where is he? I heard Uncle Smith inquire. He's feeling embarrassed, Smith. He'll be down in a moment, my mother replied. It was the most daunting experience I had ever faced. The thought of confronting Uncle Smith in this way seemed unimaginable. I sat frozen for what felt like an eternity, grappling with the reality that he now saw me as a sissy, and understanding that our relationship might never be the same. Gathering all my courage, I began descending the stairs, bracing for his potential laughter or derogatory remarks. But there was no laughter or name-calling. Instead, Uncle Smith took my hands in his, looked me squarely in the eyes, and asked, Are you happier as a girl, or would you prefer to go back to being a young man? My voice failed me. I had so much I wanted to explain, but the words eluded me. All I could muster was a single word, girl. Then, the tears began to flow uncontrollably, and I couldn't stop them. We were in Uncle Smith's office by 8 o'clock the next morning. I dressed in cut-off jeans and a simple scoop-neck top, with minimal makeup and my short hair styled as femininely as possible. My mother accompanied me throughout the appointment, and I felt quite embarrassed when the nurse instructed me to undress completely. Thankfully, since my mother was there, she left the room and did not see my body. After conducting a thorough physical examination, Uncle Smith requested a private moment with me to confirm once more if this was truly what I wanted. I affirmed it was. He detailed that I would see various changes in my body over the coming months and advised me to contact him immediately if I ever felt I had made a mistake. What kind of changes? I inquired. The changes will start off subtly, and you might not notice them initially, he explained. Given your age and the current low levels of male hormones, the changes should start becoming noticeable fairly quickly after a few weeks. It will be similar to a young girl entering puberty, but the medications will accelerate the process. The first thing you'll likely experience is tenderness and some swelling in your chest area. Eventually, you might wake up to find a more pronounced development of breasts, and they will continue to grow. Changes in your hips and thighs will follow more gradually. Your voice will largely remain the same, and while you may need to shave your legs occasionally, you shouldn't develop a beard. Honestly, I envy you for that. And what if I change my mind about all this? I asked. We'll do our best to reverse the process, but within a year or so, your testicles will likely have permanently ceased functioning. You might not even be able to locate them. This is a serious step, and I need you to be certain, Uncle Smith cautioned. I probably should have thought it over more, but I made my decision quickly. Let's do it, I said. He called my mother back into the room and asked me to lie on my stomach. I felt the chill of the alcohol as he prepped a spot on my hip. Then, he administered the injection, and I felt the cool liquid seep into my body, stirring a mix of excitement, fear, and doubt within me. The decision was irrevocable now, and I was committed to this path for the foreseeable future, perhaps permanently. As I rose from the examining table, Uncle Smith remarked, Your body now believes it is female. Soon, there will be hardly any trace of the boy left. While I was dressing, he handed several bottles of medication to my mother and explained the dosing schedule. If she encounters any issues at all, call me immediately, he instructed. And I want her back in a month for another hormone injection. If all goes well, I'll likely insert an implant then that will last for 6 months or more. That was the first time I heard Uncle Smith use she to refer to me, and the sound of it sent a shiver through me. I surprisingly enjoyed hearing it. As we prepared to leave, Uncle Smith put his arm around my shoulder and said, "Romy, I think it's time I start calling you that. If you ever need someone to talk to, just give me a call. Just because you're a girl now doesn't mean we can't still go fishing sometimes." He smiled and joked, "I guess I'll have to bait your hook for you now." I gave him a kiss on the cheek and said, "Thank you, Uncle Smith, for being so understanding. I love you." As we walked out the door, I turned back to him and added, "I'd love to go fishing with you, and I think I can still bait my own hook." Over the next few weeks, we mostly stayed close to home. My mother continued to guide me in mastering femininity, and I picked up everything surprisingly quickly. It all felt quite natural. My hair was growing out well, and I enjoyed trying out different styles. I could now apply my makeup in a fraction of the time it used to take. I had learned to cook, and my mother was teaching me how to sew. We often drove to a nearby town to shop, dine out, or catch a movie or a show. No one ever questioned my femininity, and I was growing increasingly comfortable in my new role. We lived in a relatively isolated area, but now and then, one of Mother's friends would visit. She would explain that Roger was in Florida with her sister and that her niece, Romy, was staying with her for the summer. The nearest I came to being identified was when one of Mother's friends commented that Roger and Romy resembled each other enough to be siblings. I started to notice subtle changes in my body, but nothing significant until around the 3rd week of July. One morning, while trying to wear my padded bra, it felt uncomfortable, as if it just didn't fit right anymore. I removed it and checked in the mirror, and there they were. They seemed large. I realize now that they weren't actually as large as Dolly Parton's, but for someone who had never had any, they appeared quite substantial to me. That very morning, we went shopping for new bras, and just a week later, we found ourselves shopping for even larger sizes. My mother also bought me several bikini bathing suits, and I spent some time in the backyard sunbathing to get a tan. Suddenly, it was just 2 weeks before school was set to begin. I had initially thought that I would revert to dressing as a boy for school and only dress femininely after school and on weekends, considering I was still legally a boy. However, my body had undergone such significant changes by then that both my mother and I doubted I could convincingly present as a boy any longer, and frankly, I had no desire to attempt it. Consequently, we decided to move. We listed our house, and it sold within the week. We then bought a lovely new home 75 miles away, and my mother registered me at the local high school as her daughter, Romy Watson. With a week left before school started, we hired a moving company to relocate our belongings and took a vacation to the beach. By this time, my hair had grown thick and luscious to my shoulders, and my body had developed curves I had only previously imagined. This necessitated a new kind of learning, dealing with boys. I attracted quite a bit of attention at the beach, and at first, I tried to remain aloof and ignore it. However, after some deep conversations with my mother, I embarked on this new phase of my education. I accepted my first date on our last night there, and I was incredibly nervous. It turned out to be a wonderful experience. My date was a true gentleman, and I thoroughly enjoyed being treated like a lady. Although I wouldn't dare confess this to my old baseball buddies, I received my first kiss and found it absolutely delightful. School began, and I was filled with nerves. On my first day, I chose a black and white jumper paired with a red knit top. I was up at 5 in the morning, eager to ensure everything was perfect. I styled my hair into a ponytail and applied just a touch of makeup. After changing outfits 3 times, I finally decided on the first one I had tried on. My mother accompanied me to the bus stop, and I could tell she was even more anxious than I was. The bus ride went smoothly, and I made friends with several girls on the way. As we gathered and waited for homeroom to begin, I noticed a few boys looking my way. The bell rang, causing a flurry of activity as everyone scrambled to find their rooms. I managed to find a seat next to one of the girls I'd met on the bus. The teacher introduced herself and started calling out names for attendance. When she called Romy Watson, I raised my hand. She paused, looking at something on her desk, then at me, and again rifled through her papers. Looking up once more, she asked, "Romy, did you go to Northern Junior High School in Charlotte last year?" My heart sank as I realized she had my permanent record from my previous school, which listed my name as Roger and my gender as male. I felt like fleeing, but managed to muster a quiet, "Yes, m." Relief washed over me when she remarked, "Must be a computer error. It happens all the time. They have your name as Roger and your sex as male. I'll fix this so that you won't have this issue in your other classes." She continued with roll call as if nothing unusual had occurred, and that was the last time my gender was ever questioned. At lunch that day, I was introduced to some of the boys who had caught my eye earlier. With a back-to-school dance scheduled for Friday, I found myself accepting a date invitation from a very charming boy. Excited, I rushed home after school to share every detail with my mother. We spent the afternoons that week practicing dancing, with her teaching me the steps as a girl. By Friday, I had learned well. I danced almost every dance, and by Monday, I had become one of the most popular girls at school. Due to my newfound popularity, my mother instituted a rule: I could only date on Friday or Saturday nights, and only if my homework was done. I was truly loving life as a girl. Several boys were keen to escalate our interactions, but I quickly learned how to curb those advances. I was still concerned about someone discovering my male anatomy, so I made sure to keep physical boundaries firm. This approach led me to be recognized as one of the nicest girls in school, and eventually, the boys who were more interested in physical relationships stopped asking me out. Despite this, my weekends remained consistently busy. I still remember my first escalated encounter. I was dating Edward, and we were on a double date with Julia Dink and Thomas. I knew from talking with Julia Dink that she and Thomas were into some pretty heavy petting, but I figured that was her business. Thomas was driving and Edward and I were in the back seat. After a movie and a quick stop for ice cream, Thomas drove to a place called Makeout Point. I knew that this was a dangerous place for me to be, and I guess I could have asked Thomas to take me home, but I didn't want to be a prude. So, I decided to play it by ear and do the best I could to keep my secret. Edward started kissing me, and that was okay. I had been kissed before, and I must admit, I did like it. A little later, as we kissed, I felt his hand on my chest. I should have stopped him there, but my will to resist had weakened. It did feel good. My mind was saying, make him stop, and my body was saying, just a few more minutes. Finally, he stopped his attempts, but instead, he took my hand and placed it between his legs. I could hardly believe the firmness I felt there, and I decided that this was the price I would pay to protect my secret. In just a few minutes it spilt all over. He had a mess in his underwear. Oh, I worried for days that he would brag to his friends that he made love to me, but then I decided, so what? That would only assure everyone that I was really a girl. However, I didn't date Edward any more. One of my closest girlfriends persuaded me to try out for the cheerleading squad with her. To our delight, we both made the team. By my senior year, I was honored to be named head cheerleader, a role I still cherish. During high school, my mother encouraged me to take dance lessons. I studied ballet and modern dance for 2 years and discovered a genuine talent. I found ballet far more thrilling than my earlier days playing baseball. My success in dance led me to pursue piano and later, voice lessons. Today, I continue to sing in the church choir and have performed several solos. I graduated from high school with honors and am now in my second year of college.
Uncle Smith has arranged for me to undergo reassignment surgery this summer, and I'm so excited I barely sleep. In just over a month, I'll feel complete. I'm looking forward to removing this last physical inconsistency, especially since I think I've found the man I want to marry. We met in my global studies class, and I plan to tell him about my past as Roger after the surgery. I'm confident he'll understand, as he is truly the kindest man I've ever met. So, you see, I did finally make it through puberty. Maybe not exactly the way Roger had wanted, but, believe me, this way is much better. I have not missed Roger since that first day in the beauty parlor, and now I hardly ever even think of him.